Thank you, Chris, and thank you, choir, and Robert and Sandy. One of the things I miss, one of the many things I miss when I'm away at camp is your inspiration, choir. I can be down here and you can get me up here. So that's quite a gift for not only me, but for all of us. Our gospel lesson is found in Matthew chapter number 13, and I'll begin reading in verse number 31. Jesus put before them another parable. The kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed that someone took and sowed in his field. It is the smallest of all the seeds, but when it has grown, it is the greatest of shrubs and becomes a tree, so that the birds of the air come and make nest in its branches. He told them another parable. The kingdom of heaven is like yeast that a woman took and mixed in with 3 measures of flour until all of it was leavened. Jesus told the crowds all these things in parables. Without a parable, he told them nothing. This was to fulfill what had been spoken through the prophet. I will open my mouth to speak in parables. I will proclaim what has been hidden from the foundations of the world. May God bless the reading and hearing of this word. May we hear in it a word that is to us and for us on this day. In this parable of Jesus, I would like for us to find a word and an energy which allows us to move forward. For how good it is when we find a word and the energy which gets us away and out of those places where we are prone to become static and stuck as people, as congregations, as collections of people. Martin Luther King said it famously this way: if you can't fly, then run. You know it. If you can't run, then walk. If you can't walk, then crawl. But in all things, keep moving forward. Before we move forward, though, I first want to take us back for a bit. For those of you who are very young, you are just going to have to humor me. Others of you will know exactly what I'm talking about. I Love Lucy was a television series which originated, in black and white back in the 50s. But it remained through syndication remained popular, and you can, if you channel surf a little bit, you can still find episodes today. Lucille Ball was the actress, funny, goofy, wonderful actress, who starred in I Love Lucy. A typical episode, and one of the things that we loved about her was her penchant for getting in trouble, getting herself into jams. A typical episode involved her moving about with good intentions, but eventually getting into a sticky spot. One of the male leads whom she worked with was Desi Arnaz, who was her husband off-screen as well as on-screen. When Lucy found her way into trouble, she made significant efforts to hide that trouble from her husband. Eventually, though, in every episode, he would figure it out. And what became a classic line from that show, which he spoke in his thick Cuban accent, was, "Lucy, you got some splaining to do." It is tempting when preaching upon a parable to feel the temptation to do just that, to do some splaining. The temptation for us preachers is to share with you the one and only true, undisputable meaning of the parable, to impress you with our knowledge, so that you know we didn't spend all our time in seminary playing spades and golf. Problem is that as soon as we start splaining a parable, we rob it of its power. And if you go from here this morning believing that I've explained to you the one and true and only meaning of this parable, then you've helped me rob this parable of its power. All I can do is tell you what I see this morning. And tell you that tomorrow I might see something completely different. Parables were not meant to be grasped by us, but were meant to grasp us, to shake us a bit, to provoke us to rethink who we imagine God to be, what we imagine God to be up to. And sometimes it is rethinking that is just the thing we need for our forward movement. So without doing too much explaining, I want to say a little something about the parable of the mustard seed. We typically think of it as a reflection upon the reality that something can start small and to grow into something much bigger. A little faith can be planted and lead to something big. That is a very common understanding and interpretation of this parable, and there's not a thing wrong with it. And sometimes that is exactly what we need to hear. There is, though, one problem. The mustard seed plant grows to about 10 feet, which is impressive if you think of its small beginnings. But when compared to the great cedars of Lebanon or any truly impressive tree, well, suddenly it's not that impressive. In fact, a mustard seed plant was and is so common in that region as to be considered something akin to a weed. So if we take into account the moderate nobility of the mustard seed plant, then maybe we would come to this parable this morning and begin to imagine God showing up in surprising places. The parable might lead us to consider how the realm of God and the presence of God often arrives in those small, surprising places. So maybe there is a word for us here that can energize us into forward movement. We can find the energy to keep pressing forward because as we press forward, we just never know. The surprising places where God will meet us. In the circumstances we are afraid will overwhelm us, God shows up. In the person where we least expect it, suddenly we see a glimpse of the divine. We have to keep moving forward because in our own lives, in our own beings, in our own souls, God is apt to show up when we least expect it. Now, I'm getting dangerously close to explaining this parable. And I promised you I wouldn't do that, so I'm going to stop dead in my tracks right now. And I'm going to sit down. And I'm not kidding, I'm going to. We're going to show a video, and I want you to see if you recognize it when this parable of the mustard seed shows up, where God is encountered in surprising places. I'm going to be quiet and sit down.
All right, what's your name, darling?
My name is Susan Boyle.
Okay, Susan, where are you from?
I am from Blackburn near Bathgate, West Lothian.
Well, y'all work before church. You'll tune to the fish so you can hear really well.
All right, what's your name, darling?
My name is Susan Boyle.
Okay, Susan, where are you from?
I am from Blackburn near Bathgate, West Lothian.
It's a big town.
It's a sort of collection of villages. I had to think there.
And how old are you, Susan?
I am 47. And that's just one side of me.
Okay, what's the dream?
I'm trying to be a professional singer.
And why hasn't it worked out so far, Susan?
I've never been given the chance before, but here's hoping it'll change.
Okay, and who would you like to be as successful as?
Elaine Page.
Elaine
something like
Page.
that.
What are you going to sing tonight?
I'm going to sing I Dreamed a Dream from the Miserables.
Okay.
Big song.
Yeah? Yes.
I dreamed a dream in time gone by. When hope smiled, life was giving.
You didn't expect that, did you? Did you? No.
I dreamed that love would never die. I dreamed that God would be forgiving. I was young and unafraid. When dreams are made and used and wasted, there was no ransom to be paid, no song unsung, no wine untasted. But the tigers come with their voices soft as thunder. As they tear your hopes apart, as they turn your dreams to still I dream you'd come to me. And we could live our lives together. But there are dreams which cannot be, and there are storms we cannot weather. I had a dream like life would be, so different from this hell I'm living, so different now from what it seems. Now life has killed the dream I dreamed.
Hello.
Hey, come back here.
All right. Thank you very much, Susan Piers.
Without a doubt, that was the biggest surprise I have had in 3 years on this show. When you stood there with that cheeky grin and said, I want to be like Elaine Page, everyone was laughing at you. No one is laughing now. That was stunning, an incredible performance. Amazing. I'm reeling from shock. How about you two? But
I am
Can't
so
believe it.
thrilled because I know that everybody was against you. I honestly think that we were all being very cynical, and I think that's the biggest wake-up call ever. And I just want to say that it was a complete privilege listening to that. It was brilliant.
Susan, I knew the minute you walked out
Oh, Simon!
on that stage that we were going to hear something extraordinary, and I was right.
Not a lot of touch.
Susan, you are a little tiger, aren't you?
Oh, I don't know about that.
You
I
are.
don't know about that.
Okay, moment of truth. Piers, yes or no?
the biggest yes I have ever given anybody.
Amanda?
Yes, definitely. It's brilliant.
Susan Boyle, you can go back to the village with your head held high. It's 3 yeses.
thank you for bearing through those technical challenges, team. I can't explain the parable of the mustard seed, but perhaps we just got a glimpse of it. Beauty and giftedness showing up in surprising places. We live, my friends, in a tragically disoriented world. Because of that, we in the church have some preaching to do. Seems like almost every day I'm confronted with the question if the church is losing its influence, if the church is losing its voice. We no longer live in a day where everybody believes the church has all the answers, and some folks even wonder if we're asking the right questions. But when I'm asked, is the church still relevant? Does the church still have a voice? My voice is that we will always have a voice as long as we're not afraid to use it. We will have a voice if we lift up an alternative voice to the disoriented voices of the world. We'll have a voice if we lift up a voice which is an alternative to the voices which tell young women, perhaps women like Susan Boyle, that their bodies need to be shaped a certain way if their lives are to matter. We will have a voice if we are willing to lift up an alternative voice to the voice which tells young males to act like a man, which half the time means to act like a jerk. We will have a voice if we lift up an alternative voice to those disoriented voices which tell people that their job is to fit in and to make those of us in the world and in the church comfortable. We will have a voice if we say instead that what we owe and what they owe themselves and God is to be who they are and to build faith communities which make room for that very thing. We will have a voice if we create the fertile soil in which mustard seeds can be planted and we can become the surprising places. We can become the surprising places where God shows up. We will have a voice if we find some way to offer people a word and an energy which allows them to keep moving forward until the surprising moment that grace encounters them in their journey. We sometimes speak to the issues in our faith community, and I'm awfully proud of the fact that we do. But sometimes the most important words we speak are the words we speak to the people. They are the words we speak to one another. They are the words which allow us to move forward. They are the words which help people to see themselves as God sees them. They are the words which help people to see within themselves that they are valued in the same way that God values them. These are the words which are the words of eternal significance. The parable of the mustard seed, no, I cannot explain it, but I can tell you that if we watch one another, you even are observant within our own lives, we will see the realm of God, the presence of God, the power of God, and the grace of God and the face of God show up in surprising places. Let this space be the soil where those seeds can be planted and where they can grow. Amen.